want to steal that stuff too, if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
Okay,
and I mean, this is reflecting what I heard over the past few days, so this is
Right.
everyone's ideas. I tried to just put it up, because I had the chance to put it up for the whole group to see.
Would you mind sharing that with that PowerPoint with me?
Yeah, I sent it to Oscar so he can forward.
Oh, great, perfect, Oscar has it, one of us, yeah.
Last slide, right?
That one, this one and the next one. But yeah, so these are just some of the things that I heard discussed over the past couple of days. There's a lot of talk about both adjusting the way universities handle resilience and how people make careers out of it and how students learn about resilience, and that's definitely, I think, one track. Then there's the network piece where the universities, because of their connections to all of these various stakeholder groups, can be nodes in a resilience network. And then I think so that would be the second track. And then the third track, I think, is actually in a response, when you're actually in an event, what can universities do? And what are the minimum ethical requirements for doing research in a disaster area? And I think that would be a third track. So I think that's just my way of understanding the discussion that's happened.
Yeah, I think it's a great synopsis.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Catherine.
No, go.
Oh, no, go.
I'll add on to that.
Oh, well, the mutual aid among universities, I think, if I remember right, and I can get this to somebody, I think the DRUN has a mutual aid agreement that's been vetted by, I'm going to say,
That'd be great.
from 40 to 60 universities that have signed off on it. So SUNY's having trouble with it because SUNY Council doesn't seem to really.
You got to bring up SUNY Council.
I did. He said it to me, and
Okay.
I just said it out loud.
Send it. It's his fault.
It's
Okay.
his fault, but I
Send
can
me
get
it.
that to you.
Catherine, I think it was.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the comments about the national infrastructure. Very humbly, I'll say that one of those that's in place is the National Extension Disaster Education Network. I put the new website, extensiondisaster.net, up on our cohorts session yesterday. I'm one of the delegates for Cornell University, so I'm happy to connect you to that group to think about how to integrate into it, because that's a very powerful network. We already have coverage in every county in the United States and all of the U.S. territories, including the University of Puerto Rico, and that's also an existing funding stream for this work through USDA and IFA.
And you're the master of extension services, I mean, crying out loud, we got tapped into that.
And understandably, we go through, peaks and troughs of capacity based on what the administration's priorities are at the national and state level. But I just want to let you know that at the county level, we can find a way to produce a valuable curriculum that I can have our educators who are the boots on the ground in every single county. That I would invite you to use our network in whatever way that you think is useful, and also have us at the table. I'm so grateful that one of our assistant directors for Positive Extension, Kathy Howard, is here, and they've joined the leadership committee. I don't know if you have any additional comments about that.
No, I've also served with Eden. I'm one of Cornell's delegates, and I've actually been on the board of Eden. And under the last administration, the National Security Council came to Eden and asked, what can we do more about community resilience? And we were really excited there for a while because we thought we would be able to go to DC, and that never really happened. But it is a network that is nationwide, and it includes all the minority serving institutions as well as land grants and sea grants. And so it does already have its fingers in at least every state through those institutions.
Yeah, so this is one of the things we're going to highlight when we synthesize all of these notes. I think that's a great network to use.
So the mission is like a cooperative extension service type mission, right?
Yes, and specifically, Eden is written into FEMA ESF 11 for agriculture and natural resources.
Okay.
So we are a support agency for getting information to the public and parties that relate to agriculture and natural resources, as well as serving a report function during and after natural disasters. And we also have a charge in New York to provide fact sheets across every type of disaster to the general public upon request from county associations.
And to give you an example, it's not just agriculture. In 2014, I was attending a National Eden meeting, and my colleagues in South Carolina were suffering from horrible flooding. And so basically, I just reached out. I need as many resources as you all have on flooding. And beyond what was on the website, and a ton of it came in, and so my colleagues were then able to package it and put together for South Carolina resilience, and it wasn't just agriculture, it was for community businesses and things of that nature. So I just wanted to clarify what Catherine said, that yes, we're in the FEMA for ag, but we cover larger than just agriculture.
Yeah, and just an
Right.
example of that, the reason I have the bag is under my eyes, the day that I arrived here is I had just produced a resource, from request from Oneida County and Essex, because there weren't updated resources on how to salvage or how to replace what are becoming increasingly complex electronic appliances in people's homes, like heat pumps and things. So, what do? I turn around, spend 3 hours, talk to the right faculty, and then produce that resource and push that out. This is like the form of just-in-time management.
And when you say you need curricula, what type of curricula are you looking for? And
Well-
who's the audience for it?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, what RISE wants to focus on, because, there's an existing program that's not super popular right now in New York State, the CERT program that does community, training, and they do that at the neighborhood and, like county community level, county community organization level. So, we produce resources and have all different types of audiences, the general public, families, low to moderate income households. I need to know who your audience is.
So we have, I'm sorry, I won't, but there is a lot of training and education and curricula developed that's out there now that is designed for both pretty much, your general population, people in the community who have some role in preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation. And that would be another, I think, thing to do.
You have a repository book?
There is not. It's all over the place. We fund some of that
Yeah.
on the ground in
But you could help point to where those are,
a lot of it.
okay.
Yes. So anyhow, that we should talk.
Yeah,
Yeah, make sure
Because
that
I think that
the
there's
Eden
a
website
lot
is
out
already
there.
out there, and
Yeah.
so to the extent it's local and on the ground.
Yeah, we
Right.
have a national, extensiondisaster.net is a national website, and then we have the cce.eden.edu.
Yeah, you've been patient.
You've been so patient.
Oh, so- Yeah, but speak about the training, and that was actually gonna be my point, is that there is so much out there. So my background, I'm more of the practitioner side. I wanna break into the academic side, and that's kind of why
What does that mean, break into the academic side?
I wanna go for a master's and PhD.
You literally want?
Yeah,
Okay.
literally.
Yeah.
So,
You said that.
I literally stumbled upon this conference because, I'm, those of you who don't know, I'm the, one of the heads of disability integration for the Red Cross. And part of what I do is create preparedness programs. We have our great program, Page with the Penguin, that we made with FEMA. Be Red Cross Ready. We have the state citizen preparedness corps, CERT teams. I teach CERT teams, I do that. I also teach wilderness CMTs. There's a lot of training out there and nobody talks to each other.
Right, so I think that's what we're gonna have to tap all the way
Right.
coming out of this.
Clearing.
Where is it? What is it? Again, this gets back to getting all that.
Yeah,
data.
and, but part of it too is that it's, on the practitioner side, I literally have, I'm one of those weird, exceptions to the rule where I have every single manual ever produced for preparedness. I teach for about 5 different agencies first aid, same program, written 5 different ways.
Yeah,
So we need to look at them.
okay. Tom, and then, Mark, yep, and then Stephen, I wanna go back and make sure there's another slide here we want to look at, right? Did somebody say? Of your presentation, Mark, did you say there was another that we needed
There's
to?
2 slides that we, next step, and.
Okay, we'll go to that in a minute, so, I think I had Tom.
So I was just gonna say, years ago, many years ago now, about 15 years ago, when I worked at NOAA, and I had colleagues at the Forest Service and the Army Corps, and EPA, and other agencies, we were taking a look at applied social science for natural and cultural resource management. And we were finding that, gee, we're all kind of doing the same thing, and we're never talking to one another. So we put together basically a task force of our own, to develop an online web portal. This is for the human dimensions of natural cultural resources. We call it HD.gov. So we made a joint website to be a clearinghouse and portal. This is where we use that term, that trusted source, because it was all vetted. Everything that went up there had to be moderated and approved before it could get posted. But we invited posting not only from the feds, but from NGOs, the academic community, students. We got students involved to write some content, things like that. Now, it's been a long-term kind of challenge, because how to keep it funded and keep it running, and the platforms, operating systems students migrating. But that was just as an example. What we found was there was all this great information that everybody knew about, so I should say, each of the agencies knew about their own things, and some knew about some of the others. But once we put all of our heads together, we found, gee, if we put this all in one place, even if we are not creating new content, but if we point people to where the content exists, that became a really useful tool for folks. And then they really had kind of a one-stop shop. They could go there, and then it was backed by, this big group of federal agencies that could, claim that this is really, it's not just something coming out of thin air.
Yep.
And it was similar, in my mind, similar to kind of one potential niche that RISE could fulfill, which is that convening of information to get people to the things they're looking for.
I think that might be a fundable, measurable. I understand there's different ones, but in terms of community use and in terms of prompting ways to use it and connecting it to the resources, like maybe they want to use yours because regionally it's more applicable, or maybe they need to use yours because it's broader in some ways, or the level of engagement that some community leaders can do is very different from what a tenured professor working on emergency management can do. When you develop a platform where people can just plug and play, and that's very sophisticated. I think that this academia has a way to make a very sophisticated one that for what you pump in connects you to the actual agencies and to their tools, rather than to, you are going to, if you're set out, obviously anybody in this room has the capability of figuring it out, analyzing it, put it into play, entering everything and all that, and using those tools, but that's just not the case in the scenario we're working on. So I would say make it a highly sophisticated digital portal that can be printed to show up with after it.
And you may even need to have different entry points, right? So you can create different graphic user interfaces for different target audiences.
That's,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did you steal that one?
I was gonna
But
say,
the content behind that can be.
I got a line up here.
Different ones for different.
Yep,
groups.
so, right here.
But I'm not saying that you have, I disagree in a sense, and I don't know if I'm right or not, but I don't think to the level of usage, you write it and it steers you to what fits your things. Because once you have to start looking for target audiences, then you're already making them work. And at the community level and at my county level, it's difficult. So if you just plug in and the digital pathways takes you to the right server, not the other server, then that would be more productive, I think.
And you can evaluate how well it's working.
Sorry. Photo op. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to be true to the lineup. I've got here,
Thanks.
here, then you. Somebody had their hand up over, okay.
Is it Thomas? I'm trying to read the.
We have 15 minutes, or a little less than 15 minutes, by the way.
I'm trying to read the name tag because that's pretty much, he said it in a more elegant way, but it sounds like we need a phone book, right? That's easy to use.
Does everybody know what a phone book is?
Maybe it's a wiki thing,
Typewriter.
but I think we've conversed on
Yeah,
that idea.
wiki or something, yeah.
And I don't know what research capability there is there, but I don't think we have a centralized
Yeah, no.
information place.
And that's
That
what-
we organizing what you need, not this agency, not what you need. You need weather information, you go here. You need research on this, you can go.
Okay, since we only have 15 minutes, a lot of hands come up, let's try to be quick with our.
So I was before there was even the discussion of multiple platforms. There are a number of platforms that have been out there. So I think the inventory piece is a first
This tree
step.
keeps coming up.
But there was just actually yesterday in one of the sessions, Central which is at Hunter College. It's the
Yeah,
Center
Mark-
for Puerto Rican Studies.
Mark
They have
Davis,
Rebuild
yeah.
Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And that's at least a start of a potential type of platform and
Central,
very
right.
simple information.
On
But
the
their
Hunter
platform is Rebuild Puerto Rico, Rebuild PR.
I
They
forgot.
have
we
a
were-
data map and that kind of thing, that, and also a directory, et cetera. It's not saying it's the silver bullet, but there's a piece. But even going back from that, from the university shift-based process, there's been previous networks to try and connect what universities have what. This is just an example of a resource inventory
Okay.
you can go to, and I think it was Knowles or something like that. But
Yep.
just saying there are some things out there that allow mobilization of resources. So looking at what some existing platforms are for that,
Wow.
keeping in mind the point that some people made, that in certain disasters on the ground, people aren't gonna have access
Yeah.
to the internet and that kind of thing, but,
Yeah, so that's, and Mark lived that, so yeah.
yeah.
You go back to allow the inventory repository to allow?
To allow the network to be able to find what resources out there. connect
Access
with-
it quickly.
You know, if, you know, some of the things that people have talked about is rapid response. So if there is something that says, a map that, you know, click on, you can say who's doing what, or a directory of services or a directory of people, you're able to go into that, look at it quickly, see who has what, and then mobilize.
Here, and then over here.
I've heard from local managers the need for exactly what you said, a tool that will click you through what you need to do when something happens, the internet or electricity being an issue. But I also want to follow up on the whole idea of making the inventory, but then identifying which training is for which community, because you can't give a community member with no background in emergency management the same level of training on an issue than an emergency manager that's gonna
Right.
know all these different acronyms and have all this other background knowledge. So I think there are a lot of opportunities, just from starting with a simple inventory, and from there, I think we can grow some resources.
Yeah, I think I misspoke. What I meant was that inventory and that repository would have a search engine that connected you to the resources. So saying like, okay, I'm a 10,000 person community from Vieques, Puerto Rico, or New York State or whatever, and I have this situation, I'm looking for a textbook, and they would pop up those things that actually apply to me.
Yep.
So it had pretty strong algorithms in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, serious. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
Bad search.
Yeah,
Ice
right.
storm.
Yeah, right. Yep.
I feel like this, you know, I watch some of these disasters on TVs, and I'm from the left, you know, I always read the press from socialism, from party socialism, from the left, you know, and, you know, honestly, like, when I would see read about these disasters and stuff like that, they, you know, they would tell me about how, you know, the federal support didn't really support anyone, and they kind of left people out. And, you know, you might as well just think, if you're gonna get federal support, you might as well just think about your funeral and stuff like that. And that's from the left perspective and stuff like that. And I just feel that, you know, we have to take a stance and not tolerate covert operations when we're in disaster mode or in an emergency, because, you know, even like with what happened in Venezuela, well, I read accounts of how their electricity was turned off from Houston and Chicago, and that's not right, because, you know, people need the electricity for running water and for other services. So I just feel like, you know, we can't tolerate this from anybody, and we have to be like strong, and, you know.
So this platform we're talking about could help that, right, and give people more information and more power.
Yeah, we need to give
I mean,
people,
power in the sense
like,
of political
committees,
power.
like with Cuba, they have the committees in defense of the revolution. We have to have, like, you know, be strong and, you know, just, like I said, like, if you look at some of these disasters, you see like the military coming in and taking over and treating people, buffing them up, and, you know, doing all kinds of things, you know, like the Hurricane Katrina, or like in Haiti, you know, they go in and, you know, they claim to do humanitarian aid, and what are they really doing? Trampling on the population. That's what I'm saying. We cannot tolerate this anymore from anybody.
Okay, appreciate those comments. All right, there were some hands up over here. Okay, yeah.
I think,
Go But yeah, I wanna try to go ahead and swope it a while, yeah.
Yeah,
You guys.
the big thing too is I'm just gonna, kind of more of an appeal. You know, I've been kind of at this game for about 20 years, throughout college, stuff like that. I've deployed a lot, I'm one of the most prolific disaster deployed people. I've been in rooms like this,
Yep.
tangible, actual results. Because
You've been in rooms
organization-
like this and nothing happened
and-
as a result?
Pretty much.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, organizations
Yeah.
come and go.
Yep. We're excited about it
They have
now, we
names,
go
we're
back, we
excited.
get distracted and.
Yeah,
I know.
or,
Yeah.
again, we've had another year where we haven't had a big hurricane.
Right, it's not a priority, it's not an imperative,
Yeah,
yeah.
so.
Yeah,
so-
well, I'm committed to, I know Oscar is too, we're
Yeah.
gonna make sure that we get
Yeah.
this while it's on our minds
Yeah.
and get it out for all to take a look at.
And don't forget your practitioners on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely, that's it's
Like-
a combination of all,
Yeah, that's.
it's not just the academics and the theory.
Yeah,
Okay.
and don't forget about us.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, 3 quick comments, just on the CERT. I know that everything that we've been discussing is of vital importance to the National Preparedness Division. They're trying to envision what this group is talking about in terms of the curriculum coming through, possibly through CERT or other delivery mechanism. So that's one, and if I can serve to socialize anything of what we're doing.
Absolutely,
With
yeah.
National Preparedness, happy to do that.
We're gonna be asking a lot of you.
Two, wherever. Second is, with regard to the National Science Foundation, I think that you're absolutely right. And there's so many things that we should be
Yeah.
relying upon for a peak. I think in addition to funding, we need to look to for some of that social network with what she's already built out.
I think this-
With National Hazard Center, UC Colorado, Boulder.
National Hazard Center, that's another one, yeah, but I think an NSF proposal, I mean, I'm fighting at the bit to put
Yeah.
something together, we could put the
Absolutely.
expertise we have, yeah, really compelling.
And this could lead to a lot of disaster research at National Hazard Center, like, you know, if it came in through RISE,
Yep.
maybe that could be like a prime,
Yep.
and then the subs
Sure.
as the individual universities wanted to. Third thing is just that, in all of this important discussion of the network, I want to make sure that we still give a little bit of time for what was mentioned about the next steps in the next couple of months, as far as like, I had conversations this morning with Cecilio, and, well, just as far as making sure that what we're already talking about in Puerto Rico, it's equally important that, you know, nobody's here from the Virgin Islands. We're gonna be going over there,
I do work in the
March.
but we don't have local people here.
So
Yeah, yeah.
we could operationalize that and sort of, I think it would be important to create some sort of a module that where everything
Regional.
we discussed over the last few days, and FEMA Region 2 can work with EPA.
EPA
It has
Region
the same
2.
footprint.
It's the same boundary,
It's the
regional
exact
boundaries,
same
okay.
geographical footprint, so
okay.
I would, that needs, in my mind, that needs to happen like.
Right away.
Immediately with Native Nations, New Jersey, and the Virgin Islands.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, this afternoon, they're gonna go through what succinct next steps are, but for us here, I think Oscar and I haven't talked about it yet, but we're gonna work together to pull all these notes, because we wanna get it out to all the people that have been participating in our cohort, to make sure we're reflecting what we heard you say, and then figure out, I think we're gonna learn this afternoon how all these cohort things are gonna come together. That's a real specific, in the weeds kind of thing.
Thanks.
Yep.
So-
And then over.
So just quickly, in terms of the sorry, was it?
No, that's okay.
No,
Go
first.
first.
Sorry.
Go
We're sort of waiting, sorry. In terms of the sustainability or that sort of thing, you know, you have a lot of people here that are discussing ideas. I think what's also gonna be really important for this RISE to continue is to have some sort of resource coordination unit, something like that, that is RISE, that has
Yeah,
at
so you're
least
talking about the
one-
organizational structure for
Because
RISE, yeah.
if any of these things are gonna be coordinated or facilitated, there does need to have some
Absolutely.
core of minimum number of people focused on making that
Staff.
happen. And where those resources come
How
from,
they
how
direct
that
it.
works, I don't know. But I think that's gotta be a really critical function of a coordination unit to keep this momentum going and pick the ideas up and build it.
Okay, yeah, totally agree with you. I think I had him, you were next, right now.
So, yeah, I'm from EPA Region 2, and yeah, we do welcome any opportunity to coordinate with FEMA. We do have a lot of coordination with FEMA in the Virgin Islands already, and so that made me think about sort of using existing federal collaborative efforts and tapping, sort of using that as an opportunity to leverage resources with academia in service of communities So there's the Mid-Atlantic Federal Climate Partners, which FEMA and EPA, NOAA and EPA started together after Hurricane Sandy, and it's all about building resilience. And we're looking at things like nature-based solutions and ecosystem services assessment for long-term prevention of impacts. So we haven't tied into academia at all. So it would be, and there's similar kind of collaborative federal agencies in New England. There's probably in other parts of the country as well. So it would be very helpful to try to use WISE as a forum to bring together existing federal collaboratives with academia.
Dr. Joel Sharaga
I'm sorry?
Dr. Joel Sharaga of
Yes.
our headquarters and Dr. Santos Herrera of University of Puerto Rico made a presentation yesterday, and we
Yes.
kind of formed a commitment to work together interagency.
Good, so we'll,
Yeah.
We really need to, I don't know what this special thing is happening as well. I want to go see what it is. So just maybe one or two more comments. I want to make sure that people haven't spoken yet or feeling like they can speak. Did you want to add anything? Okay. Did you, Dal?
I just wanted to say, I guess, two things. So I work for the state, and I feel this was fantastic. I found out about this whole, I guess, effort conference by accident, and so I was able to.
There's a lot of people out there.
And you know, I think that's a missing partnership. We do a lot of. I personally do a lot of work with communities directly and residents. We're in the communities, we're talking to them. I work very closely with Day3, and we always say that, you know, the federal government kind of has a vision, but we know our communities a little bit better, and then we partner with our counties and our cooperative extensions.
We know them even better.
We
It's
know
like,
them even
yeah,
better,
yeah.
and kind of can bring the message down.
What agency are you with in New York City?
I'm with New York State DEC, I'm the state NSIP coordinator.
DC, okay.
Yes.
Great.
And the other thing that maybe, is there a role for professional associations? We do a lot of work.
We haven't
with,
talked about that yet. That's good.
NISBA
Yeah.
and, you know, the ASFPN and the NISBA and the.
And at the national level.
And at the national level, right? I mean, I just feel like there's a lot of
Sure,
opportunities.
I don't think they're
for
really represented at this
Yeah.
event very much. I appreciate that. We're gonna do one more, but I want to check everybody who hasn't spoken. Anybody? You got the last word, so it's gonna have to be.
Two quick final comments. Another part of your data gathering is that they could truly immediately help Puerto Rico on the ground, Caribbean communities impacted on the ground, it is tapping all of your university federal affairs as well as the offices of sponsored research to identify the available grants.
So the advancement teams at universities and the research, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but specifically to help identify
Right.
the funding
Mechanisms, yeah.
opportunities that could be available to academics who are already in Puerto Rico and working, and especially if you can team with folks who are already in Puerto Rico and on the ground. You know, if an objective of this effort is to help Puerto Rico recover, funding is gonna do that.
I agree.
I'll
Okay.
close with that.
Great, thanks. And did you want to say anything? I didn't, okay.
That's right.
Okay, well, again, thank you very much for your participation. You know, we did not have enough time to really bring all this disclosure, and I'm sure people are feeling like there is no closure, and there isn't. So we're gonna get to that point after the fact. Oscar, I appreciate working with you, and you did a great job, and thanks for our note taking, and thank you everybody.
Here's my
Thank you so much.
probably want to know what's going on.
Easier way of the president just
So we have to find out channel of for philanthropy and the academic and trust groups. Like tell people there's something like, yeah, we're gonna give you this.
That's kind of what we
By the way, we have this project, and then they're like, and me and Danny go like, hey, wait. Yeah, so I think academia
and also too, that creates and then, if it's a regular, yeah, it's not a behind me, a little bit like Hurricane Harvey, where we had, you know, we spent $240 million. That after.
And also the idea of like, I was working on well enough in the you know, at some point it becomes like a free for all. Like, anything can happen, so we got to lawyers, lawyers, and there's a lot of structure. So I was, one case it didn't work out, but one of the cases I worked with was just my organization saw that I come in with something intentional. So I diagnosed nobody's speaking Spanish, so we got months. We tried to sell our actual
Yeah, that's what I did the whole lot of
work and people, but EPA. I don't know, because that was one thing I left from there, but I put them together, so I don't know where they went. And so it was very interesting possibilities that didn't work out contractual with the electric company and Tesla. But that's a reality kind of thing. Once that you got that kind of thing going, you want to have somewhat of an oversight, because if not, it could get like, so wait a minute, that's what you're doing here, that's the year we have.
One of our divisions is committees, right? To revolution. These things about, we're intelligent, full of wisdom, but maybe economically they don't have much resources. And so these types of activities, they tend to be left for the end of the year, before the end of the year. Maybe it's not real, but it's better you don't have $800 to take a plane ticket, you know.
Control and erosion. Project the EPA funded.
I was lucky.
In the biological area, and their presence there made everything kind of go right.
Right across the, I have a volunteer.
But then
You know,
we have some waste, water
I just haven't had.
I'll send you an email to set up that.
And also too, with trying to get into grad school,
right now they're
trying to do that, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna.
You're hearing that from the academia, they're also, we need the money. Because they're in debt, the fiscal board is saying this, and they have to get the money and deploy it, and spend it, you know. And I think that there would be a great taking what we also
By ourselves,
sustainability
from the virus.
and really would have known that.
That's
But it's basically all the
grassroots,
you know, come past you or somebody else from the area to say, okay, we can know and say, hey, you're going to be so you're inviting you back to the as a that would have been one of the things that I didn't discuss, but maybe you still can't. Because not, they're just gonna take the money and spend it. I mean, there's a big risk there.
Behind the concept of scaling in colleges. And
I'm not really sure it's working as well in Puerto Rico, yeah, you know,
That's
no, I'm not sure, that might be something you can find out, that would be the right thing to know. And I think that, you know, when Puerto Rico sets some goals, like, we're gonna be like 100% renewable for like, you know, like 2050, you know, like, we can do as well, so we don't spend the money in a really ridiculous way. And let's know what, we have at the level, it's beyond my hands, but I think that the sustainability of this, what it should not do is things to counter. Which is, it's not only that they're not going for something, it's like they're building the coastline.
But you just at that level, you would not
really hungry.
But I see it on the map. It's statewide, you know. I do some consulting there, and I participate in community cohorts like this, but mostly my work is in PX.
So,
Well, we do, okay.
So let's set up a conversation about this very soon and figure out how we can socialize it within DHS and.
So that they can be self-sustaining. They're at the top. You can't.
Well, you talk about it like this, you know, one professor from Loyola, regarding Katrina, said it like this. You know, if a third of the body of a patient who went in for surgery was removed, would that be considered resilient?
No.
And so that's the situation. Inadvertent or not, I won't even go into that. If the result is upward redistribution of resources and dislocation of populations, and what do you do about that? You put into the national metrics for resilience that they must, any resilient project must not dislocate populations that were actually affected. So there has to be like a multi-use housing, you know, there's a natural build-in for multi-use to prevent people from being systematically removed from the actual harm that they endured, and then others benefit from it. It's just like, I can't be a part of that.
I fully agree.
I'm really looking forward to setting something up to look at that resilience tool. We'll do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take all the cards that I got and respond to everyone, and I will definitely send you an email.
Well, if you don't, I'll send you an email because we have to start adjustments to our policy and our law.
That's what that was one of my main comments the first day. It's at the policy
At
level.
every level.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we're not.
Yeah, I'll summarize
We're
this for
just
Keith
still-
and,
I mean, I know.
CC, you
I'm-
want
I
I'm-
agree on Monday, Tuesday,
But
but ultimately, I don't know.
I don't think I accomplished, right?
I really get it, I did not have time to be here, you know, but
And making my program work isn't.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all in a context that works directly
Otherwise,
against the way I used to say
And
it.
I'm working the same kind of strategy.
Yeah.
So Penn, Minnesota,
Every day.
We get
And I'm
disavowed
finding
to the
out.
degree that we align ourselves with people.
Northeastern.
We get disavowed to the degree that we align ourselves with people who are disavowed from
so
disaster.
Texas A&M is the only one who's somewhat represented at
That's
national meeting right
total
now.
moral
So,
They're pretty strong.
yeah, I'm just very,
Justice.
I'm just really concerned about this as a challenge to what the beautiful, you know.
Well,
So we can
sometimes
voluntarily
you-
do that,
Yeah.
or as we see here, RISE is an expression of something that is nationally felt, that is going to make itself known in a way that would be much less present